Hello there. AC, the faceless revealer with the idea of hair. A return to Doctor Who with the claws of the Axios. Having now watched these episodes several dozen times, I can see why this would be a favourite, especially as it works to build on the relationship between the Doctor and the Master, putting more of the alien side of the Third Doctor on display, as he shows his desires to simply escape the planet he's been stranded on. However, this does have a rather different scope. Last story I covered, while both have world-ending threats, Terror of the Autons was far more pointed at the Time Lords and the Doctor. This one is a world-ending catastrophe. The story opens with UNIT tracking what they think is a comet, just to show a small setup for the story, which leads to introducing Mr. Chin, a very aggravating character played by Peter Bathurst. Oh, this guy, I mean, yeah, the things I could say about this little turd of a... Anyway, he's a representative for the Defence Ministry with a power complex and an obsession with Britain. The sort who'd advocate for Brexit or, that sort of fella. An American named Bill Filer appears as an agent of UNIT, and his flirting with Joe is hilariously kind of awkward. This is followed up with a report of snowstorms, and they cut to this guy who, doesn't really do anything for the story other than bring some odd levity via some needless bullying. Well, as you can see. Well, unnecessary to the story. Honestly, seeing this man suffer is kind of funny. The comment, UFO vanishes after this idiot. As you can see, Mr. Chen, he's a blithering imbecile and he likes to shoot things. First sort of teleported and the missiles fired were a complete waste of time. They didn't go anything, you had to detonate them in midair, the bloody stupid bastard. So you sit there going, firing into nothing, into the void, yes. Hey, you're shooting things. You're not American. Why do you want to shoot missiles at everything? After some pointless bluster regarding artillery, the Axios convince the Doctor and UNIT to come see the ship, and for reasons I'll never understand, Joe once more is told to stay behind by the Doctor. Keep in mind, she's been with the Doctor for a while at this point. It saved his life at least a dozen, maybe more times. I don't get it. He keeps leaving her behind when she would clearly save his life over and over again. Upon entry to the Axios ship, the Doctor suffers from this psychic attack, which they've kind of visualized as just him wonking around with this. I kind of like it, the old style 70s way of doing it, but at the same time, I'm also just sitting there thinking to myself, interesting, that's just a lot of overlays. The Axios discover that the Doctor is inhuman. And finally, we are introduced properly to the humanoid forms of the Axios. And let me tell you, these guys are creepy looking. It's like they try to copy humans through purely looking at classical art, not quite getting what they were seeing. And then they couldn't figure out the colours either. They just sort of were like, whatever, it's fine. And while the costumes used for this like early series look pretty cool and they're rather well done, they also kind of make me think of Power Rangers and they're like odd enemies. So, I mean, this was the 70s, so it's fair. But you can see the actors struggling to see. They kind of shuffle about a bit. Anyway, the Axios then go and explain the MacGuffin they brought with them. Axonite. It's a weird little mineral that almost instantly makes the Doctor go, hang on. These guys are obviously trying to do something dodgy, especially since they claim it can absorb and redistribute all energy at will. It's a fascinatingly nonsensical Doctor Who creation, after all. They demonstrate the effect of this Axonite on a frog. This feels like such an odd joke. Almost like there's a deliberate misunderstanding. The Axonite then is used to enlarge and shrink the frog. Not a bad optical effect, given what the production crews would have had to work with at the time, but it's still kind of hilarious in retrospect. I mean, look at this. The Axios asked to stay on Earth to resupply fuel. This was followed with the reveal that Bill, who'd been taken earlier, was being held by the Axios, along with the Master. And so ends the very first episode of Claws of the Axios. A good first act of a story, though fairly light on involvement from the Doctor, which in this era is a lot more uncommon than you'd think, especially if you're watching this only with knowledge of 2005 series plus. So, New Who. The Doctor is usually the main character, especially since the third Doctor took over from the Cosmic the second Doctor.
The next episode opens with Jo finding the Doctor and Unit. And she tells them she hears Bill's voice. Then it cuts to the Master trying to escape with Bill's help. They manage it and run from the chamber they were being held in. We also learn that Mr. Chin has been sent out to dry by the Ministry of Defense, essentially saying that if anything goes wrong, it's entirely his fault. Though this also leads to him calling and receiving military support to take control of the operation. Oddly enough, didn't see that coming. Another almost frustrating addition to this era, there are a few more changes throughout the Third Doctor's era, especially in the earlier days before he gets his TARDIS working again. There's a lot of character work done with this Mr. Chin, but still somehow makes him look and feel like nothing more than a greedy little turd who just wants to take everything from everybody else and be as xenophobic as possible and just be like, oh, for Britain, we are the champions, we are Britain, we are in charge of everything, and Britain is the best way to do anything, and... Okay, maybe I'm getting a bit carried away with ranting about Mr. Chin because I think he's a complete prick. Don't know why you would want that, but that's what they've gone for. Anyway, moving on. I honestly do actually love having characters like this appear. Well, a lot of people seem to gravitate towards more complicated antagonists who are very humanized. It kind of loses the fun of just a villain who's just an outright villain or a complete prick like this dickhead. The second part of the Claws of the Axios is largely a demonstration of power plays between the Brig and Mr. Chin. The story with the Axios is kind of hoid off to the side there with just the Doctor and Jo trying to figure out what the Axios actually want. It's a fascinating thing to have a snotty character like Mr. Chin, who is the most unlikable character I've ever seen in Doctor Who, and I've watched all of Doctor Who. This guy is uniquely unlikable. Like, holy shit. There are so many unlikable characters in Doctor Who, especially they try to make a character like Mr. Chin in some of 13's episodes. Doesn't come close. This guy is just the most snotty character I've ever seen. And the more I rewatch these episodes, the more I just hate this guy. The story itself, however, continues with the Doctor attempting to analyze the Axonite, but the human scientists kind of getting in the way, and they just obstinately disbelieve every single thing the Doctor tells them, leading to a section of odd filler with a pointless fight, and ended with the Doctor convincing the humans to just get him his TARDIS so he can do it just from scratch. While the Doctor's off arguing with the humans, the Master and Bill escape the Axons, though this is also paired with the reveal that the Master led the Axos to Earth in the first place. Surprise, surprise, right? This leads to a really rather well-made fight between Bill and an Axos clone of him. A fight that ends with the Doctor killing the clone with a primitive accelerator. Light or particle, not actually sure. They seem to flip-flop a lot in this episode on what it actually is. The episode then ends with the Doctor figuring out what Axonite is, just more parts of Axos, and there's a serial cliffhanger with the Doctor and Jo being taken by Axon and leaving Bill just sort of under attack. The Doctor and Jo get taken to Axios.
Repersonalization completed. Take them to Axios.
And I know I shouldn't laugh, but Mr. Chin looks so funny as he runs in. Like the way his suit just incongruously jumping with his running motion. Oddly enough, the reveal that Mr. Chin's lost his authority completely is rather abrupt, and they just sort of move on. They go, and then next. Then there's the arrival of the Master, who I can only describe as the most hilariously bad disguise I've ever seen. Like, look at how pathetic this is. Like, how the hell did this actually work? The Master does just sort of walk up to the TARDIS and open it. Incidentally, while I was researching this episode, I discovered that this was the first time we ever see the interior for 3's TARDIS. This is the first time we see 3's TARDIS interior, and it's weird. I double checked this thing twice. I even watched the first few serials again just to make sure. It is. This is the first time. There's a few times where he like pulls out the console from his TARDIS, but you never see the inside of his TARDIS. It's so weird how they managed to do this. It's so weird. It's almost as if the Doctor's very easily distracted. I love to see the Master pick apart the Doctor's work, mocking everything the Doctor's done in his attempts to get the TARDIS working again. He's quickly caught, though, by the brig and unit when he steps out the TARDIS directly in front of the brig in one of the funniest coincidences in the Third Doctor's run. The Master gets his freedom in exchange for saving the Earth, which he does, like, incredibly quickly, because, I mean, this is the Master. What did you expect? Talking down, and he still somehow manages to talk down to all the humans in the room, the same ones who have now cornered and captured him. He still is the most condescending son of a bitch, and I love it. I still can't get over how much I love this version of the Master. He's magnificent without any of the, like, weird, murderous craziness of the newer iterations. He has his own little streak of petty maliciousness, but without any of the, like, oddly crazed laughter and pointless rage. The Master disorientates Axios by overloading it, and the episode kind of ends with the cliffhanger that he might have just killed the Doctor. Getting Delgado as the Master makes me wonder how it would have fared if he'd become the Doctor instead of Pertwee, which, if I recall, might have actually happened, but, I mean, this could also be me just speculating incredibly wildly. Not that I'd be willing to make that trade anyway. I think he's a perfect Master. And I personally think this Master works so well because he's the quiet, calculating type, and he's just campy enough to work in the world of 1970s Doctor Who. Carrying himself with a magnificent charm and this, like, quiet, underlying threat at all times. Anyway, back to the story at hand. Specifically, that the Doctor is tortured throughout this episode, shifting his usual role to the Master. Although he actually cracks when Joe is almost aged to death by the Axios. The Doctor, not the Master. Well, I say cracks. He gets the Axios to change their mind so he can prove that he's presently unable to help them. Unknown to the Master, his interference with Axios gives the Doctor the opening he needs to attempt an escape with Joe. And here episode 3 ends. Which I said already, but, you know, this is where it ends. This is where it's done. The Joe and Doctor running for it as fast as they can, like, but it's, like, so trippy for this ending. It's got this, like, double exposure going with tentacles everywhere, and then the soundtrack is extremely 70s. That's the best I can say about it. I've been spoilt with modern Doctor Who music. I'm not going to lie. This is very, very 70s. I apologize to anyone who likes the soundtrack, but it's very 70s. Escape from Axios honestly just feels like a really, really weird math lesson with the Doctor quizzing Joe on several math questions as a kind of, like, mental shield. The Doctor and Joe escape back to the power facility just in time to stop the Master making a getaway after the death of Sir George, and literally runs directly into the Doctor as he strides in. The Doctor briefly explains what the Axios is doing, claiming there's basically nothing they can do. Though the Doctor then commands the Master's help. This leads to one of the most interesting conversations between the Doctor and the Master, with the Doctor surprisingly bad-mouthing the Earth to the Master in what appears to be a bid to escape the planet. This is an instance that reminds me of the relationship between 12 and Missy, with the Doctor being almost vulnerable with the Master, his old friend, admitting that his knowledge of dematerialization has been blocked by the Time Lords, and that he needs the Master's help to get off-world. Though there you can infer that the Doctor is kind of lying. He still feels genuine in the way that Pertwee plays it, and I love the depth it gives the Doctor, pushing him to feel a lot more alien. However, this is followed by an odd car chase that ends in a flaming car, so, like, make of that what you will. The Doctor and the Master leave, with the Doctor being unusually cold towards the humans who had for years thought themselves to be his friends. He and the Master return to the Axios, bringing the idea to them that the Doctor and the Master desire the destruction of the Time Lords. An aspect of Doctor Who that seems to have just kind of stuck around all the way to the modern era, that the Master always wants to destroy the Time Lords, and the Doctor is kind of on the idea for some reason. The Master also very, very quickly deduces that the Doctor intends to trap the Axios in a time loop, and desperately makes a run for it to get to his TARDIS. The Doctor manages to save Unit just in time, as the Axios takes energy from the TARDIS, and they vanish. Both the Doctor, the TARDIS, and the Axios. The Axios dragging the Doctor and his TARDIS into a time loop, though he manages to escape with some very well-timed energy build-ups from the power plant. And, well, this happens. Gloriously, that is followed by a one-liner from the Doctor where he lands again after the explosion.
This is a fine welcome, I must say.
Followed by this attempt to explain a time loop.
Perfectly simple, Brigadier. A time loop is it's a time loop. One passes continually through the same points in time. Passes through the same. Yes.
I've never actually heard it explained quite that badly before, where it just confuses everyone, including me. It gave me a headache. I listened to it when it just like hops back to the start. Anyway, the Doctor starts describing himself as an intergalactic yo-yo, stuck on Earth. Given this serial was shot in roughly 5 days from the research I did, I'd say this is a pretty damn good story that does differ significantly from the original idea, as it was apparently supposed to be a 6 or 7 part story and ended up being both condensed and reduced in spectacle, as the budget didn't allow for many of the more broader, sweeping ideas. That said, since I took this serial as a suggestion from the comments, it was totally worth it. Thank you so much, commenters. If you have any others, please give it, because this is definitely one of my preferred serials from this particular era. Well, I said, if you have any episodes you guys really want me to check out, just list in the comments below and I'll give it a review. I'm down to explore all of Classic Who. I'm just starting with 3 because he's in colour and he has some really fun episodes. Like, oh yes. Now, I hate to say this as a YouTuber. I'm becoming a fucking YouTuber properly, hey boys. But if you like this video, please like, subscribe, comment, give it some love, and until next time, watch the galaxy. It always time loops.